It was December of 1900, a bleak winter's day, as the relief vessel Hesperus approached the rugged shores of the Flannan Isles. Perched precariously atop Eilean Moor, the largest of these remote Scottish outcrops, stood the lighthouse, a beacon of safety for ships navigating the treacherous North Atlantic. The crew of the Hesperus, led by Captain Jim Harvey, expected the familiar sight: a waving flag, the provisioning box lowered, and the welcoming faces of the three keepers. But as they drew closer, an unsettling silence hung in the cold, salt-laden air. The lighthouse beam, usually a comforting pulse, was dark. No one came out to greet them. The island, it seemed, was eerily deserted. Eilean Moor, whose name itself means Big Island, is less than a mile wide, a formidable fortress of rock relentlessly battered by the ocean's fury. It's part of the Outer Hebrides, a chain of islands off Scotland's west coast, infamous for its unpredictable weather and dangerous, swirling currents. For centuries, these waters had claimed countless vessels. Lighthouse duty here was not just a job, it was a solitary vigil against the raw power of nature. While essential for maritime safety, it demanded an immense toll from those who served, isolating them in a world of wind, waves, and an ever-present sense of deep loneliness. Lighthouses like Flannan were beacons of hope, cutting through the dense fog and raging storms to guide ships away from deadly reefs and rocky coastlines. Their purpose was clear: to save lives. But for the men who kept these lights alive, life was a cycle of extreme isolation. Months would pass between visits from the mainland, their only companions the vast, indifferent sea, the shrieking gales, and the occasional seabird. The rhythm of their days was dictated by the clockwork of the lamp and the relentless turning of the tides. This profound solitude was a known part of the job, a challenging pact they made with the untamed ocean. At the time of the disappearance, 3 experienced men were stationed on Eilean Moor. James Duckett, a seasoned veteran, served as the principal keeper, a role of immense responsibility. His first assistant was Thomas Marshall, a man equally familiar with the sea's temperament and the demands of lighthouse life. Completing the trio was Donald MacArthur, the second assistant, a stoic and reliable individual. These weren't inexperienced sailors, they were hardened professionals, men who understood the unforgiving nature of the North Atlantic and the strict protocols required to ensure the lighthouse's continuous operation. Their lives adhered to a strict, monotonous routine: meticulous maintenance of the lamp, polishing the brass, trimming the wicks, and keeping watch. Day and night, they logged weather observations, noting every shift in the wind and every surge of the tide. This was a dangerous job in one of the harshest environments imaginable. Storms could rage for days, isolating them completely, their only connection to the outside world the distant ships they guided. These men understood the risks, they embraced the challenge, knowing their vigilance was the difference between life and death for those at sea. When the Hesperus finally managed to moor in the island's small landing cove, relief keeper Joseph Moore immediately sensed that something was gravely wrong. There was no flag flying atop the lighthouse, a standard signal of welcome. The provision box, usually lowered promptly by the keepers, remained stubbornly in place. Most chillingly, there was no sign of the men themselves. An immediate and profound sense of unease settled over Moore and the crew. This was not merely unusual, it was a stark, bewildering departure from every established protocol, signaling a deeper mystery at play on Eilean Moor. Joseph Moore ascended the daunting 160 steps to the lighthouse tower. As he pushed open the heavy door, an eerie quiet met him. Inside, the living quarters appeared oddly undisturbed yet profoundly empty. The beds in the dormitory were unmade, suggesting the men had left quickly, perhaps not expecting to return immediately. A partially eaten meal sat on the table, further cementing the idea of an interrupted routine. The clock, a silent sentinel, had stopped. This unsettling tableau of ordinary objects frozen in time hinted at a sudden, perhaps desperate, departure rather than a planned one. Panic began to set in. The search commenced without delay. Moore and the Hesperus crew meticulously scoured every inch of the tiny, rocky island. They searched the outbuildings, the storage sheds, and the rugged, storm-battered coastline. The powerful lamp at the top of the tower was found to be in pristine condition, its wicks trimmed, its brass gleaming, and its oil reservoir full ready for lighting. This confirmed that the keepers had been performing their duties right up to the point of their disappearance. Yet, despite their exhaustive efforts, there was no trace of James Duckett, Thomas Marshall, or Donald MacArthur. As they examined the lighthouse's exterior, the searchers found tangible evidence of the fierce weather that had recently lashed the island. Railings along the pathway were twisted and bent, showcasing the immense force of the wind and waves. A vital lifebuoy, typically secured, was missing from its post. Most strikingly, a massive stone, weighing over a ton, had been dislodged and moved a considerable distance. Crucially, in the small oil store, 2 sets of oilskins, the heavy, waterproof gear essential for outdoor work in such conditions, were gone. Only one, belonging to Donald MacArthur, remained. The official investigation, led by Robert Muirhead, a superintendent for the Northern Lighthouse Board, concluded with a plausible yet terrifying explanation. His report suggested that the men had been swept away by an enormous wave, perhaps a rogue wave or an unusually powerful storm surge. The incredible force of the North Atlantic, particularly during winter gales, could easily overwhelm and drag away individuals caught unawares, even seasoned keepers who understood the sea's wrath. It was a stark reminder of nature's indifference, a cold, hard truth that has shaped maritime history for centuries. Eileen Moore's design offered little refuge from the full brunt of the ocean's fury. The multiple landing areas and pathways leading to the lighthouse were inherently exposed to the elements. These platforms, often slick with sea spray and algae, could become perilous traps during a severe storm. It is highly plausible that one or all of the keepers might have ventured out onto these exposed areas to secure equipment that had come loose, or to inspect damage, only to be caught by a sudden, gargantuan wave that rose without warning, dragging them into the merciless depths below. Despite the compelling simplicity of the storm theory, one crucial detail continues to trouble investigators and enthusiasts alike: why were all 3 keepers outside the lighthouse simultaneously? Lighthouse protocol was explicit and strictly enforced. At least one keeper was always to remain inside the tower, maintaining the lamp and ensuring continuous vigil. This fundamental safety rule was paramount, designed to prevent exactly this kind of scenario. The violation of such a strict, life-saving regulation is the core of the Flannan Isles mystery, raising questions that even the most powerful storm cannot fully answer. Could an extraordinary event have compelled all 3 men to break protocol? Perhaps an unprecedented, colossal wave struck the island, causing catastrophic damage to vital equipment or the landing stages that demanded immediate attention from every available hand. Or, consider a desperate rescue scenario: one keeper might have been caught by an initial wave or suffered an accident, prompting the others to rush to his aid in a desperate attempt to save their comrade, unwittingly putting themselves in harm's way. The sheer urgency of such a moment could override even the most stringent rules. Over the decades, the stark facts of the Flannan Isles mystery have become intertwined with sensational legend. Common myths include eerie logbook entries describing madness, strange creatures, or an overwhelming sense of dread taking hold of the keepers. Tales of an untouched, half-eaten meal, or an alarm clock stopped mid-ring, have also contributed to the supernatural aura. While these dramatic embellishments make for a compelling story, they often stray far from the documented evidence. It's human nature to seek grander explanations for the unexplainable, but the truth, though less dramatic, is often more poignant. In reality, the logbook entries were standard weather reports and routine observations, showing no signs of distress or unusual events prior to the disappearance. The half-eaten meal was likely simply food left out, a common practice for keepers expecting to return shortly. These popular fictional elements, while captivating, tend to obscure the most probable, yet equally tragic, explanation: the sheer, indifferent power of the sea. The ocean does not care for human rules or human lives; it simply acts with an unfathomable force, capable of erasing all trace of those caught in its wrath, leaving only silence in its wake. Today, the Flannan Isles Lighthouse stands automated, its powerful beam cutting through the darkness without human touch, a stark and lonely monument to an enduring mystery. The disappearance of James Duckett, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur remains one of maritime history's most unsettling unsolved cases. The sea, in its vast, indifferent majesty, gave no warnings, left no bodies, and offered no definitive explanations. It merely took its due. Only the relentless waves and the empty horizon remain, silent witnesses to a cold December day when three men vanished, leaving behind only questions and the haunting echo of their absence.